Greetings, everybody, in all the time zones, whoever's dialing in. Um, Thank you for joining us today. My name's Andy Pugh. I'm one of the members of the Basingstoke Makerspace, and I'm going to be talking today about papercraft, and in particular, paper modelling. And I'll go over the different types of papercraft there are, just to sort of pinpoint where we're going to be aiming with this conversation. And but throughout this session, I'll do an overview. We'll talk about the tools that we use when we're modelling in card. And I say paper, but it's really card, a rigid card. We're going to talk about a piece of software called Pepakura, which is a Japanese piece of software for unfolding, taking 3D models and unwrapping them into a template form, printing them onto paper, onto card, and cutting them out and creating a three-dimensional model. We'll talk about setting the software up, where to download it. We'll talk about the type of files that are generated from that, some examples, simple examples, and some more complex examples of the models that we can make with this technology. We'll talk about foam craft, and that's using foam with the same kind of techniques to create cosplay costumes and outfits and anything really. You can make anything from ornaments to models to costumes, whatever you need. And then some resources and learning materials as well. Okay, so overview of papercraft. I'm sure when this captures, we'll get the full screen on that, won't we? So papercraft is a collection of crafts that papercraft has been around for hundreds, maybe thousands of years in various forms. And everybody's probably heard of origami, and origami is it's Japanese and actually meaning folding, and from the ori, and then kami, which is what we would call gami, is actually means paper. So it's paper, folding paper, and is the goal is to transform a flat piece of paper into a three-dimensional model, and with a bit of sculpting and without any cuts or glue used as well. And then there's paper cutting, which is otherwise known as silhouette. Let me just stick that in there. Paper cutting, there we go, which is Chinese, originally came from Chinese, and and Japanese kirigami, and German is Scherenschnitt. How's my pronunciation? Otherwise known as silhouette, on that. And then we've got decoupage, which is the French art of decorating an object. And most of us have seen these beautifully ornate pieces of furniture or objects that have got, had very decorative paper stuck to it and then lacquered or whatever. The Germans actually have got they also are into decoupage as well, but they call it stick and shit on it, and which is one of their been around for many years in Germany. I'll tell you later. Papier mâché is a French thing. We've all sort of seen the papier mâché in action. We're making models of mountains and things like that, or objects, or obviously those useless things that friends bring back from holiday as well, often made from papier mâché. 3D paper modelling, it became very popular during the turn of the century, and I think most of us have seen the sort of Hornby railway buildings, which were flat-packed card models that we all used to build when we were younger and things. But they've been around for a long time, and as you can see, look, 1889, we've got the Eiffel Tower there. So it's been popular for many years, and only with the advent of plastic and plastic model kits did it sort of wane a little bit, but it's still seen as a mighty fine pastime. Some of the more modern ways of modelling have are to create these very, very elaborate 3D models. And this is one I've actually built at home, but it's in pieces at the moment. But I have actually brought the dashboard of this there. And it's many, many hours of messing around with bits of card and things. It's all everything's raised and relief on there. But you can pass that around if you want. And but this is a Japanese made model, which is dozens and dozens of pages long. It's a huge endeavour. I haven't got as far as doing the outer panels yet. Pepakura. So we talked about Papercraft in general, and we talked about paper modelling, and Pepakura is a piece of software that allows you to take a three-dimensional model that you've either downloaded or you've created yourself and unwrap it and flatten it in order to create a physical model. So taking a digital model into a physical model. This also allows you to take maybe a 3D printed or 3D print model like an STL and import that into Pepakura. And as long as it's not too complex, as long as it's a fairly simple model, then it can be constructed in card. So when we talk about prototyping and things, you maybe want to make a model in card before you use any more expensive type of materials. I actually made my son an Xbox to the exact dimensions to trick him into thinking I'd already got an Xbox for his birthday, not Christmas. So as you can see here, so these are some of the things that I've made. So there's the tank. So this is a World War One tank here. This is again from card, and I've got a bit of plastic in there as well. I've got some real chain there as well put in. I'm into mixed media, so it doesn't have to be all of one particular type of craft. I'll mix it all up. But I couldn't really justify spending £70 on a plastic model kit for the diorama that's back there that I think a few of you have seen. So I thought I'll make it out of card, and as you can see, it's detailed all around. Feel free to chuck that around. Other things I made. This is an Endeavour. Now there was a 3D model of the Endeavour, but not one I could actually utilise itself. It was a chargeable one. But what I managed to do is pinch some of the files. I couldn't get any of the mast and sails, but I used an image of those, and I actually did a hybrid model. So the hull is a 3D model, but the rest of it I had to sort of use a different source of modelling. So I had to take an image and then trace around it and then create the thing. And again, that's I don't know what that is up there, but that was for a project that my son had to do, and I got involved in. This here is a bit of armour. So
it's got lots of stick-down flaps in it.
Stick-down flaps?
Yeah, to hold it together.
Yes, it does. Yes, you'll see that in a minute when we look at Pepakura. In fact, you can see here on the thing. There's flaps. If you're working in foam, which is what this is here, you wouldn't need the flaps. So this is a bit of body armour for Obi-Wan Kenobi that I made, and it's at the back of the room over there, hanging on top of that thing there. Again, that's made out of foam. You could make it in card if you wanted to as well. And Tutankhamun's death mask there, which I'll go into a bit detail on this one. I actually had a file, a Pepakura-based file that I started with, but it only had part of the actual mask itself, and I had to construct from a different source some of the detail of the front of it. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So tools of the trade. So it's probably no surprise here, but some of the key things that you need are a steel rule. Always a steel rule, because you're going to be cutting with a sharp blade, so you don't want to go through your little plastic one. I use a much more heavy duty one with a handle on it actually when I'm doing stuff, but that's quite handy for moving around. a sharp-bladed Stanley knife with blades. I also use scalpels for detail work. I used to only just use scalpels before, but I went through so many medical grade blades, it was just crazy. I also have got a sharpening stone I use as well, because sometimes you just use so many blades. But most of the time now for the core work, I use a Stanley knife on that. Sharpening block, quality scissors, so ones that you've got to clean every now and again because they'll get sticky and things, and sharpen them, but they've got to be able to glide through the card, particularly the kind of gauge that I've got, which I'll talk about in a second. A variety of glues. Now really, I don't recommend using Prit. I'm going to use it today because it's quick and easy. It's far better to use something like Mod Podge or PVA glue, sometimes super glue. If you've got doing a piece like the Tutankhamun's death mask over there, that's a nightmare if you've got to wait for things to dry, which is why you need plenty of clips, small and large ones, and those will get you out of jail. I also use magnets, so I'll literally take a couple of magnets, one at the front, one at the back, and it holds the tabs together when you need it as well. What else have we got there? I think that's it. Brushes, obviously for applying it. I also use the tape as well, and masking tape to hold things together, and double-sided tape sometimes, although this is cheap and it doesn't particularly work that well, but it might get you out of jail for a couple of times. And what I actually do, and I've done it in particularly inside that mask, when you've got a large piece, is I'll use duct tape inside it, because it's amazing how tough it makes it, and that feels quite solid now, whereas it was quite floppy before. And you find when you're using, we'll go into details, and I'll talk in detail, and then we can look at that. And also, of course, you need a medium, so cardstock. So anything from 135 to 300. I tend to use 200 most of the time. This is about 300, which is a bit more rigid.
That's GSM.
GSM, yeah, or GM squared, I think they called it, but GSM, whatever. It all depends on what you want to do. If you have, for example, this is another example here, you can see all the little lines. We're going to talk about what these lines actually mean. Sometimes they'll fold in, or sometimes they'll fold outwards. So, and this particular model here is a quite complex. It's a mask, so it's quite organic in its shapes. Whereas this little simple one, which I'll be demonstrating shortly, which is a little Superman logo, is obviously very boxy, very straightforward, easy to do. Works well with a stiffer card as well. Next. So gluing. So as I said, liquid paper glue is probably the best, but you also need to have clips. Hot glue gun. Now, I only use hot glue when I've got large projects I'm doing, if it's something big. It works well. It's not the best way of doing things, but it does make things solid inside. And as I said, the glue sticks, if you're going to use a glue stick, use a good one. So use Prit. Don't buy the cheap ones that I've got over there on that 3D printer, because they're not very good. If you can use one which is almost like a hybrid super glue type of stick, even better. Next. Feel free to send the questions. So I've given you a quick overview of. Oops, hold on a second. Of the basics. What we're going to do now is dive into Pepakura and just see what it's all about. And I'll be jumping from doing live interface, going through the interface and all the rest of it. So we're going to look at Find It, which is finding models. We're going to print the models. So from the PDF it generates onto a piece of card. We're going to cut it out, we're going to glue it and build it. So, Pepakura, also known as PEP, is a program that creates buildable 3D models. For free, you get a free viewer, which will allow you to do most things you need to do, unless you want to start creating your own models and getting clever, like exporting to DXFs for importing into the laser cutter, for example. That's when you need a full license. The company itself is called Timersoft. It's a Japanese company, and essentially it allows a three-dimensional model to be unfolded and printed and manipulated and do all sorts of clever stuff with it. So you'll be able to do a lot with the viewer itself. And as I mentioned, you can import OBJ, 3ds, and STL files into there as well. And it can export DXF rather, and it uses the .pdo file format on there. So at the website, you can click on download. You get the free version, and then for a princely sum of let's have a look, $49 flat price. It's a forever price. It's not monthly, it's not annually. Very rare these days to have that, but I reckon for most people the free one will work. Maybe if we start to use this in anger, we could maybe look at getting a license for on a single machine that we could do something with on that one. Right. Lots of sources of PDO files, the files that they do. So you've got the Pepakura gallery itself. A lot of the stuff there is a lot of Japanese sort of influenced cartoon characters and things like that. Paper Hollywood's a good one, but of course just search for PDO files on Google and you'll find a load of stuff there. You'll be amazed by what you do find. Don't get confused as well, because this is PDO files. There's still a whole market of just PDF file, not a normal document you can just print out and do exactly the same thing. All this allows you to do is see what your model looks like in 3D and rotate it, and that, which makes it a lot easier to build as well, particularly for the complex models. So just wanted to touch on when we're folding. There's what's called a mountain fold and a valley fold. So on here, you can't see this here, but we've got different types. If it's got a straight line on the model, it's a cut. So there's an example of a cut, cut all the way around the shape. If it's the dashed line, then it's a mountain fold. Mountain means convex, right? Concave if it's a valley fold, right? So simple as that. So in some of these things, like this particular model here, will be quite organic. So there's a lots of dips and raises on there as well. Whereas this one will be pretty much mountain fold on most of what it does.
Do you use an edge to get sharp folds?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that. So this is a nice. I wanted a really simple one that we could look at. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to nip to over to. I'll drag it over onto the desktop. In fact, let's have a look. So it's that one. Right. Oh, I know what. Right. I thought I had it on there. Just give me a moment. Right. Superman logo. Here we go. Right. So let's swap the screens over. So that was just a PowerPoint thing. So what we can do here is take the image and rotate it. We can zoom in, we can zoom out. Now there's a whole bunch of functions here which I won't touch on in this session. There's a lot of them you don't need at this stage. I've actually got the full license on this, so the viewer is a lot more simplified. But what we've actually got is an unwrapped document there. And I can do a number of different things here. So for example, I could, here we go, boom, boom, settings. I can turn the texture off. You can add additional textures in there as well. We can actually, I'll touch on that on a different file, but we can size it as well, so we can actually make it smaller or larger. If you make something larger, then it will span across a number of different sheets of card. Now you then need to think about how you join those together to keep them keep the strength in there. But that's basically what we've got here. So what we'll do is, if I can just slide along here, I'm not going to do the whole thing because I think everybody understands the gist of it, of what we're doing here. There's two ways of doing it, right? So one of them, you could just take a pair of scissors, and which works actually for in most cases, a pair of scissors on a simple shape is ideal, and it will give you what you need. When you're actually looking at more complex shapes, then you will need to use a knife, and I've cheated with this as well. I've pre-scored the actual parts, because some of these are going to be, or in this case they're all going to be mountain folds, but I've pre-scored them in order to allow me to quickly, there we go, right.
So score on the folds, do you?
You do, yeah. And I used to think that you had to score them underneath, but using our scorers here, and these are different, they all sort of, I'm sure they have specific uses, but they've got like a very sharp edge on them. I'll pass one over there, I'll pass it along there. Oops, sorry. And you actually don't damage the paper, because I used to think, oh, I'll use a knife and just be very gentle. It doesn't work, because it damages the card, and normally if you're doing it against a coloured printed surface, it will damage that as well. But this actually works really well, and I'll show you what we do. Now, there we go. This is when I wish I had did a Blue Peter and one I prepared earlier. But this is semi-prepared earlier anyway, so it's not so bad. But with Papercraft, you get into a rhythm when you're working with it, and you follow, you do all the same sort of functions together. You know, for example, I do all my horizontal cuts from using a knife, a blade. I'll do all the horizontals, and then I'll rotate the work, and I'll do the other side as well. Right, so here we go. I'll just put that there, and I will need to use a knife on this as well.
When do you have to use a knife rather than scissors?
When it gets difficult. So, for example, if I can't, because there's only certain things you can access with a knife. For instance, here, right? So here's an example of a bit where I could, at a pinch, I could just rotate it, but it's not very it's not crisp. So this is when I would now put a blade on it, and I've got a fresh blade on there as well. So I always use a fresh blade every time I start on a little project. That's almost off there. If it's got a little snag on there and things, then you can just sort of do that. And then we've got one here, so you can see, oops, on there. That's a difficult one to get. So I've cut it there. I've cut it all the way up there, and I just need to release it. There we go. And again, it's got a little snag on it, so I just go into there. That'll do it with my blade. some of these more complex models have you need to use a collection of different knives, and I've got some other blades there which give me a bit more flexibility. Right, so there we got. We've released the whole thing. I think I've got it all done. So what we would now do is score it. Now you could score it beforehand, and I would say probably scoring before when it's a full A4 sheet is probably the better way to do it, which I did, right? Strangely enough. But what you do is, if we move this, so make sure you've got a good stiff self-healing cutting board as well. And what I always do is take it on the I haven't got a small one, have we? Anyway, I always line up the where the crease is, where you've already scored it already, and just give it an extra help on an existing corner, and don't risk doing a bad fold. And I've got one here. There we go. Now the camera's probably not picking up on this, but so I folded that down there, and it does take time. There's, you've got to be patient with Papercraft, because it's something which I always have something on in the background. Might have a radio on and movie playing that I'm not particularly interested in watching, but it's good to have a bit of noise on, and it's relaxing as well, because you're creating, which is always a good thing, isn't it? And
So you're working from the outside folds inwards?
yeah. So these are all mountain folds, because they're all going to be folding inwards. Sometimes you might have it, they might have a valley fold. You might have to go up, and you might have a dip in your model or something that you need to take into account. Now, the good thing about if I just go to here and settings, layout, let's have a look. Edge color. We can show edges, show faces, change. Let's have a look. Can we do that on there? I forget which setting, but there's a setting which you can actually see where the folds are, and the folds will show up as a different color. You can change it to have a different color on there. We'll see on one of the other models without textures on it on there. So that's almost done, and as with anything, preparation, if you put the time into to prepare something, the output will be far nicer. And now I've got a bit of extra white there. Can you see that's white in there? So I was a bit sloppy with the scissors. So that's it. Let's fix that one. Got a little bit there as well. Right, so we are almost. Right, so we have might need a bit of extra flexing to give it to allow it to come together. Let's make sure the camera's picking it up. That one needs folded there. Right, so what we should have here. So that one needs an extra fold. So we've now got a 3D model, which if I just to put that together. And I think in the interest of time, so we can move on with the next section. That's what it's going to look like. We can put print on it or put glue. I would also use, in this kind of situation, for a model like this, I would use some masking tape, maybe some very low tack, like the green stuff you would use on paint, to hold it together, so that it would actually stay in shape on that one. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the next thing, because it's going to have a lot more interesting thing to talk about. Oops. Yeah, so what you can actually do is you can move all these around within the thing. So if we've got multiple smaller objects, these can all be moved around. But I'm going to show you, there we go, if I take this off here, in fact I'm going to get rid of that. Get rid of that. Right, so we're back into the presentation. Here we go. Right. So any questions on that so far? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. When you're gluing the last tab in,
Yeah.
you can't get access to both sides.
Agreed. Yeah.
What do you do
I
there?
agree. Yeah, and that's a valid point. So what I tend to do is look for the path of least resistance when it comes to models. So you look at, the bigger the section to put in, the better for me, because it's always a small one, which is a pain. So I would start on the small end first, get all those in there, fold that over, and attach this bit here, and leave this last bit here. And if you've got like a small a sliver of input, I mean these are useful as well, where you can actually get a thin object in there to pin things together on that one. Magnets as well. I mean, I've sacrificed magnets before, where I've got like a lot of tiny little magnets somewhere, and I'll leave a magnet in there just so as I could glue it. Right, worth doing. Now, you might have a rattle in there later, but it's up to you. But yeah, I agree. It can be a nuisance on things like this. What you could also do is put some rigid card in there to support it, so you've got something to push against. That's another way of doing it as well. So there's a couple of different methods of and having a bit of rigidity in a model is important as well. If I just move forward, right.
Do you have a particular order in which you stick the flaps down, or do you just by
No,
instinct?
I think trial and error. There may be some scientific approach to these things, but as I said, I tend to go for the smaller, more intricate, detailed elements to get those shored down first, and then leave the bigger flap or whatever as the last closer. And on that, we'll glue that up shortly. But there's a lot more interesting stuff to see here. So an advanced model. So this is what you can see at the back there. Now the model itself, which is you'll see in a second when I pull it up. And Tutankhamun. Right. Let's move on to here. So I did this as a hybrid. So this is the original model, which is reasonably low poly image. Comes with textures. This is what it produces. So when you unfold a 3D model, and you can import your own and then unfold it, it will do a best guess of where it will fit. So for example, the interesting thing here is, so these are very noticeable side bits here. So if I move up to the side bits, if I click on that, you can see it's selected there. So when you're actually making this, building this together, you can actually see where you're going and add in these little bits. Now this is an organic shape, and that's typically quite difficult to play with, because what you're trying to do, if I rotate, you can see on there, and if I take another shape there, You see how it's all coming together. Now I decided with this model that I wasn't going to mess about with a face because it's so many curves and shapes involved. You can see all this kind of thing here, just so much work. So I decided to buy a papier mâché mask. I went to Hobbycraft, and the face looked not too dissimilar to Tutankhamun. Saved me God knows how many hours of work, and I ultimately got a far better quality model as well. And so that's one of those papier mâché masks that I prepared. I made the eyes with foam and with foam basically, and I sprayed the pupils like a dark grey. And but what we've got here is a an example of a rather complex model, but it's not as complex as it could as it ended up as. So I got a simple. This is actually a fairly low poly model. So what I needed to do was find textures to create the. If I move this down, if you look on here, so you'll notice that my model's got this on as well. And what I actually did was I went and found a chargeable model that here we go, that I wasn't prepared to pay for, and if I might go to here, so this is on Sketchfab website, and so here's the model. Looks a bit familiar, and I wanted this bit here, this front apron bit. So what I did, I went on to here, and I selected the base color, and they've changed this. This used to be, it didn't used to have a torch on there. It used to have just one big image, and I managed to take the whole of the texture. You can see the detail there, super high resolution, and I stole the bitmap for it. If you scroll up this way, it looks blank, but what you've actually got as well, look, these are the markings on the back, and that's what I've still to make for that model there. However, I'm going to 3D print it instead. I've decided I'm going to 3D print a death mask instead of pursuing the card one. So that's what the textures look like. And in here, if I go back to 3D, you can see the bump maps for those, and there's the textures. You've got the metallics in the second somewhere. Oh, there we go. So you can see the metallics, how the light affects the 3D model, and there's obviously a wireframe as well. So that's where I stole it from. I managed to get the textures. So try not to be as linear. Try to think of other creative ways to where you can get content or materials or textures or whatever on that. Next, here we go. Right. Okay, so let's talk about scaling. Now, there's going to be a number of reasons why you want to scale an object, and if I just go to see now, right. So we're going to move here. So we've got a little arcade machine, a Batman arcade machine, and as you can see, it fits into half of basically an A5 sheet of paper. But what if we want to maybe double the size of that? So what we can do is we can take this image here. You notice it adds another page to it if needed. We're going to rotate it. We're going to move it down to here. We're going to take this. We're going to rotate this one here, and now we're going to go to, let me just move, there we go, right, so we're going to go to 2D layout, and we're going to go to scale, and I'm going to increase it by 10%. Now if you look on here as well, there's a key we can use, Control L, and if I do Control L, oops, sorry, take that off here, Control L, right, so that might be a little bit too much. Let's have a look, scroll down, just fits in. And if we go down to the front of the thing, so that's the maximum size you can fit on that sheet. So now effectively, I'm not sure exactly what percentage, but it's probably increased by about 40% the image size. And oops, back to there. So very easy to do. You can then print that out and you've got a much bigger model, and you'll see where this could come in useful in a minute as well. So let me get rid of that one. Is it all making sense so far? Yeah. Okay. So next.
Presumably, if you have multiple pieces, you can spread them across many sheets.
Exactly, and you'll see this in action here. So now we're talking about real world stuff like cosplay costumes, or anything you want to make really. So this is Mandalorian's chest armor, chest and back armor. So if I just jump to my example, right, so take that here, let's put it on here. Right, so now we've got, so here's an example of where we need to scale this. This is an adult size one. So say I want it to fit my 11-year-old son. We go to our 2D layout section up here. We look at scale, and we use the Control J key combination, Control J, to shrink it. Oh, hold on, I need to move across to that one now. Control J. Just a sec. Oh yeah, it's reducing. Right, so and Control J, and one more. We'll do that. So it's shrunk it down, right? So this is probably maybe I don't know, 70% of the size of the other one. However, it's a bit of a mess now. So what we need to do now is to snap. There we go. So take that. So what we're going to do now is basically take the parts layout, which will automatically relocate the parts to fit on the A4 pages. So bear in mind, these are all A4 size pages. So as John was saying, what it does, it takes the model and it spreads it across in a what's the term we use when we're printing a banner format, as you would when you're printing like a much larger image on a normal printer. So we said manually adjust there, and if I put OK, now it's tied it up for us. So this is let's say it's 70% the size of the adult version. We've now got it across less sheets. It's a more compact. We can now take these and play about with them. So we can actually take this here and shift it up, just as we do when we're messing about with the laser cutter. Exactly the same kind of thing here. We can shuffle these around to be more efficient, and that we're using exactly the same principles as we do with a number of the things, whether it's 3D printing or laser cutting here on that one. If I just click on there, so all good so far. We're coming to we're not far from the end now. So now if I close that, okay. Right, this is an interesting one, and this is a project I personally would like to do myself. Now, what we've got here is a 30 centimeter tall Eiffel Tower model, which looks stunning, looks fantastic. if you notice on the struts, white space on the struts there. So maybe, just maybe, this would be an ideal candidate for the laser cutter, right? So
There's one on the shelf.
this Eiffel Tower.
Pink box next to you.
Oh yes, a little one. Yeah, we're going to do a big one. It's going to be the size of a human male.
That was a single sheet of A4.
Was it? Well, this won't be. This is going to be big. So so I've got the idea I've got here. If I again move to the Pepakura file. So here's our big boy here. So this is an image. So what if we wanted to enlarge these pieces? So we've already seen enlarging and shuffling around, but the idea I had is we can actually also export on that. Now I won't show you export because it's not available on the free one, but if I export it and I put it into straight into RDWorks, and it will take RDWorks will feed it straight in, we get this. Alright, so it takes it in as a DXF file. It's all ready to print. Now, one thing I noticed, I thought, oh, hold on, we've got our cutouts here, which is great. So all these girders will be taken care of. But hold on, we haven't got our infrastructure here. However, that's not a problem, because when we look at our images here, my thoughts are we laser cut the first files, or all the files, which will give us our silhouette models, and then we print out these again, and then cut these girders here, which we don't want silhouetted, where we've got the black background, if you see the black in there, and just glue them around it, so you've got some additional detail. We spray the infrastructure with a similar kind of colour, and then we've got a beautiful piece of a model which will come together. So, but I think that could be this big. In fact, we could do it whatever the maximum size these girders are there, but we could possibly join more together as well. But anyway, so that concludes. What I will add, Steve, is a list of resources at the end there. I'll produce a list of resources.
So send it to me tomorrow.
I will send it to you tomorrow on that. Do we have any questions? Did that make sense?
Yeah. Very good.
Um,
I think it's probably best to stop at that point.
Indeed.
Recording. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.